The Access Advisory Group to order.
Recording in progress.
Good. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair James Marston,
Here.
Vice Chair Robert Burnham,
Here.
Skylar Kovich,
Here.
Nick Kuntz,
Here.
Kieran Luckett, Michael Rasler, Suzanne Tejada, Councilmember Megan Harmon.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to announce their presence? You don't have to, but it'd be nice to know who's here. Oh, hi, Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
All right.
And then Ashley Shu,
Here.
Daniel Henschke, Sarita King,
Present.
Leah Monaco. Thank you.
And who is this taking roll call?
Raymond Lamb.
Hi, Raymond.
Hi.
Good to
Hello.
meet you.
Okay, item 3, committee member reports and staff announcements. Nick, I think you had a statement.
Well, I do. It has come up in email with staff that it may be appropriate to reform our valet ad hoc committee at this time. And I'm volunteering to participate in that. And I'm wondering if anyone else would like to join that ad hoc committee.
Can you give us a comment or two on purpose?
Yeah, so we have a long-standing issue with valet operators in Santa Barbara who misuse and monopolize the ADA parking, mainly on private property, sometimes on city property, and they operate pretty much with impunity. The business owners are not responsive, and we need to have some sort of city enforcement effort to change this activity. And we now have a new resource, or new to us, newish resource in the city's Community Development Department and their enforcement officer who may be able to help with this.
And the role of the ad hoc committee will be to?
Interface with the enforcement officer and report back to this committee.
Thank you.
Nick, this is Bob. If you are chairing this committee, would the meetings be on Zoom, I would think?
Yes, I would hope to do most of them remote. We might meet with community development in person, on site.
Okay, I'll volunteer. I'll join you.
Okay.
I'll volunteer too, Nick.
Okay.
I have a question. Is that separate from the parking committee?
Yes. And I guess I should note that this is likely to, it seems likely to me that the scope may extend beyond my concerns with valet operators, because I know that there is a contingency of city staff who would like to explore a valet ordinance change, and I don't know if that would come into play with this committee anytime soon or not, but it seems likely, and there's some history there. That there was an attempt to do a valet ordinance that failed because this committee was not willing to allow it to be completely inaccessible.
Thanks, Nick. I want to point out something. The Blue Curb Committee mostly works with Public Works Department on trying to get more blue curbs on the public right-of-way.
Correct.
This is a problem with the valet, which is, as Nick said, mostly on private property. They have no control over that, so that's why it's separate from the Blue Curb Committee, because they cannot do anything to these valet people. It needs to be from community development or city administrator or something, but
Yeah.
that's why it's separate.
I think there's at least one instance where that takes place on a city-owned lot that's leased to the,
Right, but mostly it's private.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm
And
wondering if that should be combined with,
Is your microphone on?
if that should be combined with a handicap parking survey that we might need, because I believe we've lost some blues curb spaces. So maybe a whole parking ad hoc, or,
So such a ad hoc does exist, and there's a vacancy, and I was going to bring that up when we get to that ad hoc report, that there is a vacancy that we need to fill. So maybe you'd like to join us there.
okay.
was that a yes?
Well, we can address
Yes.
that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So-
Nick.
And then you can fold in your survey that you have thoughts about into the Blue Curb Parking Subcommittee.
Yeah.
All right, any staff announcements?
Do we need to put that to a vote to form this ad hoc committee, or is that sufficient?
I'm satisfied.
I think that's fine.
You
Okay.
you've got 3 members.
Jones, Burnham, and Luckett
Yep.
on the new valet ad hoc
Yes.
committee.
Yep.
Okay, I want to make a few statements here. We had a lot of success in the last 3 months behind the scenes, and one of them was one of our visitors here today had a problem with parking on Coast Village Road. Karen Luckett worked with Ashley and Emil from Community Development and Elizabeth Sorgman, and they finally got that fixed. Ashley called Emil, and the same day he went out there and told these guys, you can't do this. So we've got that success. And thank you for that. And also the fact that we've been looking for a while to get written public comments stored in a historical manner, so you can go back in time and look at what comments have been made. And finally, Sarita spent a lot of time on that. Ashley was supportive, and we now have that where anyone can send in a written public comment. Besides being sent to the committee members, it's going to be now on the website, from newest to oldest, so we can have a history of going forward, because oftentimes we get a public comment, it gets, because the rules say we can't talk about a public comment in the meeting, because it's not on the agenda. So sometimes these get lost or forgotten, so this way, we're gonna have that, and so I appreciate Sarita and Ashley's input on that.
Yes.
And that's all I'm gonna say. We did a lot of stuff, but that's the top 2. And then, Ashley, do you have any staff announcements?
I only wanted to mention that City TV is now recording these meetings for us, so it's a little different setup from the last meeting, where we had the camera in the middle of the table. So now the
Everybody
cameras
wave.
in the room are now recording, and it'll be posted to the city website.
Okay, thanks.
And how does someone get to that today? Because I know someone was on the road and wanted to join.
They can join over Zoom if they want to give public comment. Or I believe there's a live link on the city website where they
Okay.
can watch the video.
And it will be recorded on YouTube for later viewing, right?
Correct.
Okay. And are all these cameras all working?
I believe so.
Okay.
One behind you too, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm glad I shaved this morning.
Dan, I have a question. Are there any?
Your microphone's not on.
Thank you. Are there any updates on new accessible intersections, like with talking lights? You know, we had talked about that a few months ago.
Well, that'll be in our ad hoc reports.
Okay.
Okay, the next section is public comments. This is a place where anyone can make a comment on things that are not on the agenda, and you have up to 5 minutes. Do you have any people with a raised hand?
We have two, one Nancy Capone,
Okay.
and then another on Zoom, Barbara Silver.
Okay, great. Nancy, do you want to come up and talk to us?
First of all, I would like to thank all the, I don't know anything about these finances, but would like to thank you, all the Access Advisory Committee and city staff for all your amazing work, continued work on the accessibility issues in Santa Barbara. Specifically, I want to thank you for the new blue accessible parking spots recently added on the cross streets along the State Street corridor. Those are appreciated. We're able to participate in First Thursday gallery openings and other downtown events more easily, and it feels more welcoming. Today, I would like to report an accessibility problem at the historic county courthouse. I recently received a summons for jury service, and on Monday reported to the first location for prospective jurors and was able to secure blue parking in front of the jury assembly building on Santa Barbara Street. After checking in, I traveled in my manual wheelchair with the group's help across Santa Barbara Street, up the sidewalk to the ramp mid-block leading into the historic county courthouse and down the hallway to the courtroom. After an introduction to the case, the judge instructed all of us to return at 2 o'clock. Circling the block where the courthouse is located, I found the only blue parking spaces in the mid-block of East Figueroa Street. However, to my dismay, there was no accessible entrance at all on that side of the building. The entrance nearest the blue spaces has many steps up and is now permanently locked. So I drove around the block twice and observed there are no accessible parking spaces near either of the two open entrances to the building. And when I called jury services, the staff member explained that with heightened security concerns, the county courthouse now provides access through two main entrances only. And heavy security screening procedures are in place, which is fully understandable. So there's a ramp across from the entrance mid-block on Santa Barbara Street with no accessible parking there, and also at the entrance on Anacapa near the big archway of the courthouse. And so the staff person and I were talking about perhaps after the library book drop area, which seems to go on forever, and then the 75-minute zone on Anacapa Street, could we please get some blue or green 15-minute, because that works also for us, pass holders, to be added there so that jurors could actually access the courthouse and perform their jury duty. I had to be dismissed because there was no access. We also need blue or green parking on Santa Barbara Street near the ramp, which is in the mid-block leading to that courthouse entrance. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Shall I hand this to you?
Ashley, can you see what the city can do about that?
I will, yeah, I will follow
Okay.
up with staff.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, and we have Barbara Silver.
Yes, Barbara Silver on Zoom. You may speak now.
Unmuted now?
Yes.
Hi, Barbara.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and congratulations for making it to the big screen. This is such a big accomplishment. Ashley, thank you for everything you've done behind the scenes to enable this. That's it for me.
Oh, thank you.
Nice to hear your voice, Barbara.
Good to hear you, Barbara.
just kidding. It would be nice to see you.
Good, we're doing good on time here.
Okay, while we're doing the technical stuff, it's time to talk about the minutes. Does anyone have any suggestions or any corrections to the minutes that were sent out earlier? If that's a no, then I would receive a motion to accept the minutes and a second,
Motion to approve.
So moved.
and a second.
I second.
All right, so I think we have to do an official vote here, so can you do another roll call for us, please, to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
Suzanne Tejada,
Aye.
Michael Rasler,
Aye.
Karen Luckett,
Aye.
Nick Kuntz,
Aye.
Skylar Kovich,
Aye.
Vice Chair Robert Burnham,
Aye.
Chair James Marston.
Aye. Okay, the minutes have been approved.
As a point of clarification, I wanted to bring to staff's attention, I just got a message from a member of the public who's trying to call in and says that the webinar phone number is not working.
Oh,
The phone number, not the link.
Correct, the webinar call-in phone number.
Are they able to go online, you know?
Are they able to go online at all?
Yeah, I think if
I
they
wanted
were,
to
they
send
probably
it
would
to
have.
somebody.
So maybe if they're able to get on later, we could re-entertain public comment?
I would approve that.
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay, the next item is the ADA Coordinators Report. Ashley?
All right, good morning, everybody. I just have a couple of brief updates. Chair Marston already covered a couple of items that I was going to provide an update on.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So as we mentioned, City TV is now recording these meetings, which is great and available online through YouTube. I wanted to follow up on an issue that was brought up at the last meeting about Shoreline Park and some questions about whether the disabled parking signage was compliant. I did follow up with the Parks and Recreation Department on that, and they verified that the signs are compliant with the California Vehicle Code and are enforceable. So the rangers are enforcing those parking spots. So I wanted to report that back to the committee.
Thank you.
Also, another issue that was brought to my attention since the last meeting was some issues at the Imadanari Festival this past year with disabled parking at the Mission being blocked by portable restrooms, some bike parking, etc. So I did reach out to the executive director of the nonprofit that puts on the Imadanari Festival and had a good conversation with her, and she has agreed that in the future nothing will be placed blocking those accessible parking spots at the Mission. And she was very, very eager to make sure that the festival is accessible to all. I have a couple of curb changes to report. Within the city, there were 2 added since the last meeting and 1 removed. All were in residential areas related to requests that were received. And I wanted to also remind the committee and the public, and we will talk about it during the presentation about our new website, about the online form that we have available for submitting issues, accessibility issues. You can upload photos and add a description, and that's really helpful to staff to have a better idea of what the issue is, and then we can forward that on to the appropriate party. So we'll highlight that during the presentation about the new website and show you where that form is located. And if you could help us advocate to others to use that form, would be much appreciated. That's all I have.
Ashley, I'm sorry I had a quick discussion of the written comments. I would like to hear from you what you were going to say, because I'm sure I skipped some of the stuff in my quick summary.
Oh, I was gonna mention essentially just what you did, Chair Marston, about, written public comment is now being posted on the AAC website. And, written comment that's received in advance, I believe it's before 4 PM the day before the meeting, will be posted to the website and, distributed to the committee members. And any written public comment that's received after the meeting will be posted to the website and included in the meeting minutes.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Shu, I have two questions. Nick, did you want to
Yeah,
go?
go ahead, I'll follow.
Okay, two questions. Regarding the E-Modernari situation up at the Mission, if it's my understanding that that area is not within the city's jurisdiction, is that correct? It's the county?
That's right.
Okay, so
And
my...
because the event was on private property, no city special event permit was required.
Okay, so my question is there a method in place or maybe something that can be created to interface more with the county or with private property owners to solve these issues when accessible parking is limited or excluded from an event like that?
Well, in this particular case, also part of the conversation was one of the facilities managers at the Mission. So for any other events that the Mission may hold on their private property, they're aware. And I think the best is to report, you know, if it's possible to find an event organizer at the time and speak with them. Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer since events on private property, the city doesn't have jurisdiction over.
Right,
so.
right. But perhaps it's something to look into, to work maybe closer with the county or some way to work with private property.
Bob, I would suggest that there's likely an ADA coordinator within the county organization as well, and you might work with them.
Okay. My second question, Ms. Shu, is just real briefly, I noticed there was a feature on Key News last week that the initial design, and my understanding from Chair Marston is that it's the outer design of the proposed police department. My question is, this has already been approved by the Planning Commission, but as far as the overall design, including all the elements, the components of the internal structure, how soon will we be engaged in looking at that whole design in terms of assuring full accessibility?
Committee Member Burnham, you're correct. The Planning Commission has approved the project, and City Council has approved the environmental document. So now the project is moving into more detailed design. This would be an appropriate time to engage this group, so I'll pass that along to the project manager, and we can get that scheduled as a future agenda item.
Thank you. Good, thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment on that, Robert. With a new building going into, design, development, and construction, they need to comply with all of the ADA accessibility codes. So there's no way that building is going to be permitted without being accessible.
Well, I would beg to differ. I have been on the Building and Fire Safety Code Board of Appeals, which I'm desperately want you to join. And I have seen a lot of inaccessible work permitted.
Well, Nick, let me explain what Susan said. This is on a new building. It has to be 100% accessible.
New buildings are different than remodels because there's certain.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm just saying.
And the requirements are there, but there are many a slip between a cup and a lip, as they say, and we know that new construction has not always been compliant, especially when it's a city project, because tend to go through the same channels. They do construction internally.
And this is why we're here.
Yep. So, I'll get off that soapbox. I did have a follow-up question about your interaction with parking at Shoreline Park, or with park staff rather. And I wondered if you were able to share our observation that park staff abuses ADA parking, and if there was any way to get a memo out to staff that can't continue. We can't have park rangers using ADA parking while they do facilities maintenance.
Committee Member Kuntz, I can send out some sort of reminder
Okay,
with that regard.
great, thank you.
And I'm going to butt in. We talked earlier about getting problems solved. I want to mention real quickly that Mr. Kuntz wrote a very nice letter to the school district about some parking problems they had there, and he got a very nice comment back. Oh, well, we're so sorry, we'll never do that again, we'll tell everybody. So I want to thank you for that. He took a very nice tone to them, explained it fully, and they came back with a nice tone and said they fixed it. So have you seen any?
Thank you. The next day, I experienced another incident and reported it and got no response, so.
Oh, okay, well,
But thank you for reminding me to follow up with them.
okay. All right. Ashley, you have nothing left?
Nothing additional for me.
Okay, well, thank you for all your
Thank you,
work. We really appreciate what you're doing. Okay, the next one is an update on the website application replacement project with Zach Smith and Scott Nelson.
Okay, first off, we want to thank the Access Advisory Committee for the opportunity to make this presentation and for their help throughout the website application replacement project or WARP. I'd like to introduce the web team. I'm Scott Nelson, webmaster, and we have Zach Smith, web services analyst, also presenting today. Just a brief history. From the very inception of the website application replacement project, accessibility was a main goal of the project. One of the project goals reads, improve website user experience and content delivery for the public with improved site architecture, multilingual functionality, device-independent experience, and accessibility features. To achieve this goal, the city made a commitment to adopt the Website Content Accessibility Guidelines version 2.1 at level AA conformance as the standard to which the website would be delivered. Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, are a set of standards and guidelines specific to websites that guide the development such that pages are compatible with assistive technologies and optimize the user experience for visitors with a variety of disabilities, such as auditory, cognitive, learning and neurological, physical, speech, and visual. The Access Advisory Committee created a subcommittee to participate in the procurement and development process with respect to accessibility. During the procurement phase of the project, the subcommittee produced an extensive accessibility assessment report for the WARP Steering Committee with 2 priority recommendations. 1, implement an accessibility widget. 2, implementation of an accessibility reporting tool to assist city staff in maintaining maximum website accessibility compliance into the future. And I'm really very happy to report that both recommendations have been implemented and will be explained later in this presentation. To complete the procurement process, the steering committee unanimously chose Electric Citizen as the preferred website vendor, Electric Citizen proposed a Drupal website content management system for the city's website foundation. Drupal, as implemented by Electric Citizen, was found to be the most accessible option of all the proposers. Also, Drupal is the foundation adopted by the federal government for its agency websites, for which accessibility and inclusion are requirements. We will leave some time at the end of our presentation for questions and answers. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Zach, who will describe the website design and development process with regard to accessibility.
Thank you, Scott. So I'll be going over some of the design and development process during this project. But before I start, I wanted to thank everyone involved in this process. In addition to the committee here, over 160 staff were part of this project in one way or another. And throughout the process, our staff was really in consensus that accessibility was a top priority. And through that, really all aspects of the design and development process were made with accessibility as an overriding decision-making factor. So as I have the website up here, just hovering over some of the top-level navigation items, the colors and contrasts that we chose, the typography, so scrolling down and showing some of the headers. Our design team spent a lot of time looking at comparisons of characters like zeros and capital O's and ones and lowercase L's to make sure that the accessibility on the fonts was typography was as good as it could be. Page loading times, we made sure that we were loading things as fast as we could. And then, as Scott mentioned, consistency between desktop, tablet, and phone viewports was very important as well. I'm going to bring up a Lighthouse report. So as I generate this report, this is testing a number of standard benchmarks, but it's not a holistic look at accessibility. As this score comes up, it's coming up as 100 out of 100 for this benchmark report. It shows that we've done a good job building an accessible website at launch, but there is much more work to be done to improve and enhance accessibility on the website into the future. So this report does reflect the decisions that we made throughout the development process, though. So decluttering and keeping things simple and consistent with appropriate headings and heading order and a consistent page structure. We also have skip to links when you tab into the page. Scott will go more into depth with some of these features. The navigation and sub-navigation, as I bring that up, are lists. So that makes things work well with assistive software. Images are tagged with alternative text. Images can't be added to the website without alternative text. And our staff is trained on how to input alternative text when they add an image to the website. And as I scroll down and bring up the events, calendar of events, we opted for a list instead of a calendar grid like we had before for accessibility reasons. And we also do have this date picker on the side here that we consulted the AAC subcommittee on before implementing, which was great to get feedback on that. So, throughout the design and development process, our core and design teams really consistently opted for accessibility features over items that would sacrifice accessibility. And in addition, we have a number of accessibility tools with the new website that Scott will start us off with the UserWay widget.
Okay. Thank you, Zach. Now that Zach's presented some of the features built in to the website Drupal Foundation, I'd like to highlight some of the features of the accessibility menu. We're looking at the Access Advisory Committee page. First to note is that the bottom left corner of every page is a persistent and prominent international symbol of accessibility. This icon remains fixed in the same position regardless of scrolling. So as I scroll down, it remains in position. and it's in the same place as viewed on desktop, tablet, and phone. The icon provides access to the website accessibility menu and enhanced accessibility functionality. So to navigate the website, you don't actually need a mouse pointing device. A computer keyboard is sufficient. Tabbing into the page using the tab key on the computer keyboard invokes a modal link that appears at the top left-hand part of the screen. Subsequent pressing of the tab key on the computer keyboard allows for 4 separate options. The first option is a skip to main content link. This allows visitors using screen readers the ability to instantly move past all the repetitive main navigation links directly to the content section. The second tab presents and enable accessibility for visually impaired. I'm going to press enter on this option. And the link immediately sets up all the pages on the city website with features that help many visually impaired visitors. Features include highlighted links, bigger text, more line spacing, display of link tooltips, higher color saturation, and more. The third tab presents a link to open the accessibility menu. The fourth tab presents a link to open the accessibility navigation menu. This menu provides a list of all the headings, landmarks, and links contained in the page. It's a very quick way to navigate the page when using a screen reader or using a computer keyboard. The fifth tab brings the visitor back to the page. I want to note that the accessibility menu user settings are remembered in the visitor's web browser cookie cache. So visitors do not have to reset their favorite accessibility settings every time they return to the site. The accessibility menu can also be opened by clicking on the ISA symbol, which I'll do right now, or pressing Control plus the U key on the computer keyboard. I've opened the accessibility menu and will reset the display options. Now also at the bottom of the menu is a link that says Learn About City Website Accessibility. I clicked on that link. The link will bring me to a page that explains all the website accessibility features we're previewing now in the demonstration and more. There's down the page, there's a description of the accessibility features built in. There's a link to an assistance accordion, and in that accordion is a link to submit web issues with the website, to include accessibility. I'm going to close that form and come back to the Access Advisory Committee page. And again, on the Access Advisory Committee page is a link to report accessibility inquiries and barrier removal requests. Clicking on that link brings me to the form that was mentioned earlier. If you have accessibility questions or would like to request removal of a physical barrier within the city's right-of-way, please complete the form below in order to contact city accessibility compliance staff. So with that, I invite you to experiment with the accessibility menu to see if you find value in some of the features we've reviewed and some of the ones we've not, such as screen reader built into the pages themselves, dyslexia-friendly fonts, text alignment. Now I'll turn the presentation back over to Zach for conclusion and summary of the city's ongoing commitment to website accessibility.
Thank you, Scott. And as I mentioned earlier, you know,
Screen reader enabled.
oh,
Sorry.
it's all right.
I was trying it out.
Good, good. So we are happy with the results so far, and we have a number of tools to available to keep maintaining and improving accessibility. So I'll go over a few more of those. First up is OnBase. So OnBase is the city's enterprise document archive system, and it allows for the search and retrieval of documents. And as part of the website project, we moved in all of the boards and commissions archive documents before 2022. Thanks to Vince Wong and all of our boards and commissions staff for doing that. And as part of that ingestion into OnBase, all of those PDFs are processed for optical character recognition, OCR, which allows for PDFs to be read by assistive screen reading technology. And as part of the migration, 40,000 PDFs from the boards and commissions archive pages, again through 2021, were migrated into OnBase. And going forward with a goal of January 2023, documents from 2022 and immediate past boards and commissions meetings will be archived directly into OnBase. The second tool that I want to talk about is called SiteImprove. So this was purchased as part of the project for accessibility remediation into the future. And it was mentioned by Scott earlier as a priority recommendation from the AAC subcommittee. So SiteImprove's web accessibility tools index the city website every 5 days, and it catalogs and prioritizes accessibility as well as functionality issues like broken links. And the reports from that system allow city staff to easily follow and adhere to the WCAG guidelines via weekly reports that they get emailed to them. Lastly, I just wanted to invite feedback from everyone here and everyone listening. Website accessibility is a fairly new discipline, and it really is a journey. It's not just a destination like a launch. So we want to get feedback on things that should change. We may pass some benchmarks that I just brought up, but user experience and page speed can still be improved, and we're working on that. Also, our perspective is limited. We hope to address unseen areas via usability testing, but we also want to encourage members of the public to contact us directly via our website issues form or forms if they have suggestions for changes. So please feel free to get in touch and let us know if something needs to be changed. So thanks again for having us. And I'll open it up to questions and answers if you have any.
Okay, this is Bob. Scott and Zach, thank you both for all your willingness, all your hard work and your willingness to work with us to achieve all this. Now, if I have a text-to-speech screen reader, you're saying that I can use the tabs to navigate a page and not worry about the icon in the lower left corner? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, you can tab into the page, and that will bring up those the functionality for the accessibility menu, and then you can just move through the page with the keyboard.
And drill down according to where I want to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I think, Bob, you can find the accessibility menu if you want by pressing the H key with JAWS a number of times until you get the heading.
Yeah. Okay, now my other question, and I'll leave it at that, is when you say alternative text to apply to anything that comes on the website, especially if it's a graphic, is there a minimum amount or a parameter that says you have to have this much text in order to properly describe or label what that item is?
Bob, great question. There is no limit, no minimum limit, but SiteImprove does question quality of the alternate text. In fact, just this past week, I found 4 images where alternate text was simply the name of the file. And remediated that. And so that really gives me a lot of confidence that the SiteImprove application is really earning its due for us.
Okay, but questions? So, what's that?
Yeah, make sure your mic's
Go ahead. Great. So, yeah, I've been really impressed with the work of improving the city website. I've been able to use it to fill out forms for tree trimming and other sidewalk issues. And so, yeah, there's a couple of different ways to find forms, like either by topic or, couple of different subtopic possibilities you can find to get to different forums, which I think is really good. The one thing I found as a user of screen reading software, JAWS specifically on the computer, is a lot of landmarks, which JAWS will say something like landmark breadcrumb, and I was kind of feeling like there were too many of those, and I brought that up to Scott and Zach, and I was wondering if there were any updates about that or thoughts about whether that could be modified.
Skylar, thank you. Great question. Yes, we're in the process of wrapping up the project team, and the last act is to take all of this input that we've had thus far for the website, put it into a spreadsheet, and move it to the website sustainment team, and they will be processing these types of requests. And these are exactly the types of input that we need, because though we pass the automated benchmarks, this is a user experience issue that Zach and I were completely unaware of. So this is the kind of thing, and we do have maintenance with our website vendor that we can take to them and say, hey, let's look at this. Let's see what we can do. And we may come back to you with some questions about that and what might really make sense. So I am hoping that the collaboration that we've had for the past year or two will continue on into the future.
I just wanted to, Michael Rassler, I wanted to thank and compliment Scott and Zach and your 160 team and the city as well. I just think this is outstanding. Huge improvement, and I'm just wondering to myself, how do we get this platform to be the basis for all the websites? Because everything should be set up this way. Corporations, nonprofits, cities. This ought to be standard, not something so special that you have to contract to have it built the way you guys have done an outstanding job doing it. So just thank you very much. It really, it's wonderful.
It looks, Karen, look at, it looks very beautiful and user-friendly. The only thing I couldn't do this morning is get onto the Zoom link to send to a friend who wanted to attend. So is it possible you can quickly take me to where we can get that on this website?
Sure.
I'm going to follow you on my phone.
Yes. So the Zoom links are available via the agendas, which can.
Oh, okay.
That's something that we've thought about internally too.
And is that on this website?
That is on the Access Advisory Committee page, which is from the boards and commissions.
Menu, link, City of Santa Barbara seal, picture, navigation landmark, search.
How do I turn it off?
Landmark, row 1, column 1, row 1, column 1, search site, input field, link.
I put it on text to speech.
Oh, for voiceover on the iPhone, you double tap,
Okay, thank you.
double tap with 3 fingers.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, those are in the current agendas. But yeah, it's something that we've thought about, and it's through Zoom, and actually that goes to committee member. I can't see your last name. Rassler's question about really kind of third-party vendors and ensuring accessibility for those types of platforms as well. Really, our website is the foundation for web visitors for the city, but you may get linked off to a specialty tool or something like that where the tool isn't as accessible as we'd like. And I think that wrapping accessibility reviews into procurement for those technologies is good, but sometimes there's one tool that does this one thing, and it needs to be improved in a accessible way. But what we're hoping with the website is that the foundation is accessible. So the main tool that we use to get people to where they need to go is accessible, and we have control over it via the content management system.
Any other comments?
Well, I wanted to share that, my perspective. I spent 20 years in a role very similar to Scott's as the webmaster, and I have an appreciation for all that goes into this at a very granular level, and so I'm very impressed with all of this. I only wish that every department within the city was aware of the accessibility requirements and obligations, and I appreciate that you all took this very seriously and did a remarkable job. The only criticism I have of the entire setup is there's one page which is kind of important to everyone with accessibility concerns, and the old site, as antiquated as it was, when you were tabbing through to get to things, it was the first thing you tabbed to. It was the very first link, accessibility, at the top. And now it's the smallest one in the bottom right by the copyright link. And I'd really like to see that in the new accessibility tab menu. Only people with accessibility needs are going to be tabbing through that initial, I forget what you call that feature, but Scott, you demonstrated there's 3 or 4 initial tab functions, and I think getting to that content in that menu would be really helpful.
Thank you for that input. We will make note of that and get back to you on that.
Great, thanks.
I'd like to make a final comment here. As soon as we found out about this new project, we formed an ad hoc committee. At the time it was Nick because of his web skills, and Bob and I. And we worked with these guys, and they were very helpful. As you know, some of these different departments we reach out to won't even talk to us. So these guys were always there, and they gave us homework, they gave us questions to answer, they gave us tests to do. We worked a lot with them, more than any other department in this city actually looked like they wanted our input. After a while, Nick realized that his web skills were not needed as much as the blind accessibility, so Skylar joined, and we did some more homework. But I just want to say that this has been what I wish every department in the city would do, was actually reach out to so-called stakeholders, which they usually forget about us, and work with us on this. I think it was a great experience for both of us. I was very impressed with your understanding and your learning about our problems, and I can't say enough about them. But it was great to have you here, and I think the project is really good.
Hear, hear.
Let's give them a round of applause.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming up. Okay, the next item is the Public Works Downtown team with Brian Bossy and Roy Fortney.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here before you today. My name is Brian Bossy. I'm the the Public Works Downtown Team Manager, and it's nice to finally meet a number of you face to face that I have been in contact with over phone or Zoom. So I am here with Mr. Roy Forney, and Roy is going to kick off our presentation today regarding downtown parking and automation, and then I'll get into ADA enforcement, an update on that both for the State Street Promenade as well as Parklet citywide.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Roy Forney. I'm the Downtown Parking Operations Supervisor. Today I'm going to be going over a brief presentation about our automation efforts and how it relates to our accessibility efforts with that. So to start, I'm going to talk about what is automation, or at least what we FIL is the definition of automation. An automated parking system incorporates payment and pass-through technologies to allow parkers to enter and exit the lot with little to no help from a downtown parking employee. Next slide is how we achieve automation. So automation is achieved by giving our customers multiple ways of paying for parking fees through technologies without staff assistance. Some of these technologies include a pay-by-phone option, which is our SWEB mobile application, Apple Pay, Google Pay, tap function, and potentially pay on foot stations. Essentially, this creates a self-service system for those who want to pay for parking. Some of, uh-oh.
No questions.
Apologies. Thank you. Okay, some of our downtown parking disability accommodations include our disabled parkers can park in our lots, are provided a designated accessible parking stall in each of our parking lots. We have a total, I believe, of 136 across all of our parking facilities. We also provide a disabled validation for those that present a handicap placard and or license plate, disabled license plate. And we can also remotely send our validation to our customers. Disabled customers can press a help button or call or text a phone number where we have a designated phone line for those who need assistance at our exit points. Some of the downtown parking courtesies for disabled customers include our disabled parking, all customers who present a disabled placard and or plate are offered a disabled validation, which provides an additional free 75 minutes for those customers, which is a total of 2.5 hours of free parking. They also have a daily max of $7 per day, so no, that would never be exceeded for our disabled customers. Here, we're going to just discuss how our license plate recognition software works with our disabled placards and plates. And so there's a couple of pieces of this that I just wanted to, I know were questions that came up. And first and foremost, all customers are required to keep their entrance ticket, even though we have that LPR system. And this is for the reasons of our LPR system potentially not working, and or if a customer does not have a front license plate. All of our plate readers are front license plate readers. We do have a good amount of vehicles that don't have front license plates. Our LPR system will read the front plate at entrance and exit point and will determine fees depending on length of stay. Fees will be displayed at the exit column, and at that point, fees can be processed with credit card, near field technology like Apple Pay or Google Pay, as referred to earlier. With fees being displayed, our customers would be provided the disabled validation, which we can send remotely from our office and just send it right to the column, which would provide that free 75 minutes and again, that $7 daily max. I know that some questions have been brought up in regards to how we can utilize our LPR system for our disabled customers, and what, at least at this point, we can't utilize the LPR for a validation. It's strictly used for more pass-through purposes for our parking permits, and then of course for the rate that we have, the standard rate of the 75 free minutes and $2.50 per hour. I also know that there were some questions that were brought up in regards to our RFID cards and our HID cards, which are used for our permits. And again, unfortunately, we can't utilize those to place a validation on that card. This is also used for pass-through purposes for permits and or our prepaid cards, which is more of like a gift card at the exit point. Some of the assistance that we have for our disabled customers include a voice assistance for customers who press the help button at the exit column. That button will be pressed by one of our customers It will charm or chime our intercom system that is in our office, and one of our staff members will respond to the customer, giving them instructions on how to process payment and or assist them with checking their disabled placard and or disabled plate so that they can be offered the disabled validation. We also offer for our customers who are deaf or hard of hearing, there is a phone number that's placed on the exit column that could be utilized by our customers to send a text message and or phone call to an employee in our downtown parking office, again, so we can assist with some type of instructions and or sending the validation.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Of course.
So the only way to get the discount for the disabled, when you exit, you have to push the button, right, for assistance? Then it gets, the fees get calculated accordingly? Is that how it works?
So during our automated system, yes. Majority of our parking hours, we do have a staffed kiosk member that can assist with that. But during the automation times, which again are somewhat seldom, in the morning, in the evening, the answer to that would be yes. We would have to send the validation.
Okay.
Okay, so that pretty much concludes my presentation. I would like to open it up for any questions the committee may have.
I have a question here. It kind
Yes,
of
sir.
relates to what Suzanne said. I thought you said the plate reader would actually calculate the fare you have to pay on the way out. Is that not true? And you still have to hit this help button?
That is true for the standard rate. The validation and or the extra time that is provided to our disabled customers can only be provided by one of our employees there at the kiosk or during our automated time from our office staff members.
So your cameras do not read the plaque hanging from the rearview mirror, correct? Just the license plate because of privacy issues, is that right?
Yes, sir, that is correct. Chair Member Marston, that is correct. The plate readers aren't, they read the plate at entrance. They can't necessarily define whether it's different or not from a standard plate to a disabled plate.
Okay. I think to me anyway, the slides were a little confusing because it looked like if you had a disabled plate or a placard, it did it automatically. So you might want to look at that, but I think that's why we got confused. But thank you. So everybody has to hit the help button if they have a disability and want the...
If they stay more than 75 minutes.
Right.
That is correct. So if they stay for more than 2.5 hours, I'm sorry, no, you're correct. If they stay for more than 75 minutes, yes, they would press the help button and or text or phone call an office staff member.
Okay.
Mr. Forney, this is Bob Burnham. Now, if I owe a fee for a parking violation, is there a part of your system that allows me to call on the phone and use an automated system like a bank line? I use my bank lines all the time because it's most accessible as far as transferring monies from accounts, getting balances, all that. Is that part of this system where I can call on the phone and use my keypad to access information and pay my parking fee over the phone using my bank line or a credit card?
No, sir. But what we do have is a phone line where you would reach one of our staff members in the office. We start with an automated messaging, but you can get to either one of our front counter staff members and or one of our parking operations staff members for assistance.
And then would they be able to take a credit card or a bank account with routing number for me to make that payment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Bob. Are you driving now, Bob?
I wish. No, I was with my sister and she got a parking violation. I wanted to help her pay it, but I wasn't sure
Okay.
what system was in place.
Are there any questions about the automated?
I have another question. Karen Luckett, thank you for your presentation. First, what if someone is what we call temporarily disabled. They've had shoulder surgery and or rotator cuff pain, and they can't reach the button. So what are the options of not pressing the button?
Yes, thank you for the question. The answer to that would be utilizing the phone number that we have on the column to send a text message and or phone call for assistance.
Okay, and if there's 10 or 20 cars behind you, what would you do? What would you suggest? Because the beep, beep, beep happens.
Of course, I understand, yes. And so that is the reason why, at least at this moment, our automation hours are early in the morning or late at night when traffic flow is much slower. During the busy times during the day, we will have a staff member there to assist.
Okay, and then, I don't know if this is part of your talk, but what if the person is parked in the handicap space and there's no placard and there's no plate?
Thank you for the question. Yes, with that, we typically are told by one of our staff members that there is some concerns about a vehicle, and we will either contact dispatch and PD and or write a citation ourselves.
Do you make any rounds through the parking garages looking for that, or do you just wait till there's a complaint?
Typically, we wait for the complaint, not necessarily looking for it. Yeah, that's a very difficult question to answer. Yeah, I guess if some of our set, not everybody is deputized, so not everyone can cite those. But again, any complaints that do come up, or if we do notice it, we'll most definitely either cite or make the call to PD.
It seems one of the issues that comes up regularly with this committee is enforcement. And and a big issue with enforcement is manpower. And it's dollars and cents and it's people. And I'm just wondering, I understand not everybody is authorized to cite somebody, but everybody has, I shouldn't say that, most of the employees are going to have eyes and they can see and they have phones and they can make the call. And I'm just, without hiring more people to just do the enforcement and walk the garages and see who is parked illegally. And like I just finished 3 months of cardiac rehab at Cottage Hospital, and at the free parking there they put in not only handicapped but charging stations. And one of the big talks was all the scofflaws that are parking in the charging stations, and they don't even have electric cars, let alone that are electric cars that aren't. So they've, with enough complaints, they got into enforcement, and they have volunteers, who do walk the garage and look for that now. And then they follow up with a citation or, some other, banning them from the free parking, whatever they do. We have a number of different volunteers and people out on the streets, and the, guys and gals, and I guess the yellow shirts. Any opportunity to have some kind of a regular or routine, just to walk through, just to eyeball it. And they don't necessarily need to be the one to write the citation, but if they see somebody in violation, then they should know who to call. Some dispatch, somebody should be sent out. What we've seen is when somebody does get a ticket for parking illegally in a handicapped spot, and they're a pretty steep ticket, there are not a lot of repeat offenders. Well, we found out and asked and looked into it. A lot of that is visitors and people from out of town, and they don't care because they're not going to pay the fine. They're leaving. But for the people who are here, if they get fined once, they're generally not repeat offenders. So just wondering, is there any opportunity to find a way to just have eyeballs, on those spaces? That's just my comment. Don't need an answer. But I do have a question. Came up in discussion recently with a friend, and it's interesting, especially with everything going, automated on the off hours and things like that. But this was a friend who had to run a couple errands. Took his mom's car. Mom has handicap plates. He's not handicapped. Pulled in to park, and was there. Pulls out, and he's going to pay. And the young man, at the the ticket booth, a high school student most likely, said, "No, you're free to go." He goes, no, I need to pay. He goes, no, you got a handicap placard. Yeah, but I'm not handicapped, it's my mom's car. Nope, can't take your money.
Wow.
So the question that came up is the handicap parking benefit provided, is that to the vehicle or is it a benefit to the individual? And if it's a benefit to the individual and you actually have somebody that's trying to do the right thing, there ought to be a way for them to be able to do that. It was just a really interesting conversation.
Scenario.
Yeah, it was like the reverse of what you would ever think or hear, but it's accurate and it's true. And my mother-in-law, has a handicap placard. It's in my wife's car because she doesn't drive anymore. So when my wife picks her up, that goes up in the car, and she can park and get in and out of CVS or wherever it is. But I had a heart attack. I could have applied for, waited, gotten a handicap placard. Doctor said you should get one. I used the one from my mother-in-law, knowing I shouldn't do that because it's for the person. I didn't technically have one, but I used one knowing. And fortunately, I didn't get stopped. Nobody asked any questions. It was all, time is over. I've recovered, graduated from my rehab. But it's just an interesting thought of the placards and the license plates, I believe, almost have to be linked to the vehicle and whoever is in it, which I think is an error, but I don't know any other way that it could be enforced or be done. And that was just kind of our conversation.
Appreciate the information, and yeah, my answer to that would be it is supposed to be for the individual, not necessarily for the vehicle. Now, I will say it is up to our staff members and or office staff members to use their best judgment when providing this validation. I would say our staff member didn't do it right by not listening to the customer and hearing that this vehicle was not theirs but their mother's, so they should not have been given the validation. But yes, it is a very difficult situation to try to determine exactly whose vehicle or handicap placard it is for.
And we all know and are very aware, you can't ask, what is your handicap? So I might get out of the car looking fine, even though I've got a weak heart, and need it. But, exactly, it's just an interesting.
This is Suzanne Tejada. I have a comment regarding that situation. I'm semi-ambulatory, and I was parked in a handicapped spot, and I was at the beach unloading kayaks, and my husband was helping me, and I was confronted by a police officer saying, "You're parked in a handicapped spot, and you don't look disabled." But I showed him, or when you get the placard, you get documentation from the DMV, which associates it with your name, and I keep that in my car. So if anybody ever questions, I can show them. So it is related to the individual.
It is, definitely, yeah. And it should be. But you can't enforce it that way.
Right, but in this parking situation, I don't have any comment on how to handle that. But anyway, that's just it is related to the individual.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple more comments. If it's questionable whether this car should be parked in a handicap space and we don't want to give them a ticket, is it possible we can get some kind of warning thing? Put a warning, please do not park here, you will need to verify. Or like even us on the committee, we often see violations because we're looking for them. And even this warning thing, maybe we could say, hey, you got to make sure you're handicapped. The other thing we might want to consider in the future is I've heard different cities give higher fines. So some cities are given fines of $500 to $1,000 for violations. So that might be something. I think we need to give it more press because there's a lot of violators, not just in this city, but all over. People who, I'm just going to be in there for 5 minutes, or, well, no one's parking here and there's no other space, so why not? I live next to, well, I'm on the west side by Bella Rosa Bakery. So there's a handicap spot, the paint is almost all washed off, and there's no sign in front of it saying, do not park here, you'll be fined. So that might be something we want to look at, of repainting and putting a sign up there, because I see violations all the time there.
That would be a good issue for our Blue Curb Committee. I think this is slightly different here with the parking garage, but I have a few comments to share. I want to, I thank you for your presentation. I thank you for your work on trying to improve the situation that you inherited. I want you to know, I want Ashley to know, I want everyone to know that years ago we were presented with the fact that this was coming, and we raised a lot of flags, a lot of concerns. We asked to be involved at a more granular level much earlier on to avoid being in the situation that we're in today, and we were ignored. We were told by
Victor?
no, about one step up.
Rob?
Dayton said, oh no, it'll be all accessible, don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not.
Don't worry.
Today it's not, and I don't know that you're ever gonna get there. I have always avoided the downtown pay lots. I can't even reach to get a ticket. I get apoplectic at the idea that I might get in there and have a line of cars honking behind me and no recourse. Refuse to use the downtown parking lots. When I saw this plan, this project coming, I asked to be a part of the solution, to help guide you to make this, not you, the city, to make this accessible. We were written off. We were excluded, and now it's everywhere, and the opportunity has been missed. The investment has been made. The technology that's not accessible is there, and we're stuck with it. So please think of us in the future.
Amen. Karen, those are some good ideas, but I think the police department might be able to address some of those, because these guys only work with the parking garages. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is Brian Bossy. I am the Public Works Downtown Team Manager, and I'm going to continue our presentation specifically about accessibility update on State Street and our citywide parklets as far as enforcement is concerned. I wanted to first outline our enforcement process for you. It is very cumbersome, and it definitely is a process. So first off, we have an initial visit. We go on-site, an on-site visit with a CASP as well as city staff. So we had to go out and hire a certified access specialist to do this, because our staff, being downtown parking, as you all know, this is out of our wheelhouse. We do parking, as Roy just talked about. We are not an enforcement agency, and so this is something new for us, and we were tasked with it, and we are moving forward with it. So at that initial visit, if you are found to be in violation of an ADA standard, we issue a notice of violation immediately on site, and we are required to provide reasonable time to address that violation or violations. Usually it's about in between 14 and 21 days. That also depends on staff resources and when we can get back out there. Following that initial visit, we have a first reinspection. So if you are found to still be in violation, we issue an administrative citation. And so what we do is we take photos, go back to the office, write up a report, a letter, send that out. So that takes a number of days. And then we also still have to give them a certain amount of time legally to correct that violation. Of course, on the opposite end, if the violation or violations have been corrected, no further action is needed. We then follow up with the second reinspection, go through the same process. If you're still in violation, you're issued an additional administrative citation with a correction date. Again, generally about 14 to 21 days later, we come back out. At the same time, if that violation is corrected or violations, no further action is needed. Lastly, we come out for a third reinspection. And if you're still in violation, your expanded outdoor business area or parklet, those privileges may be revoked. We haven't gotten to that point yet in our process. However, if the violation or violations are corrected, again, no further action is needed on our part.
May I interrupt with two questions that really are.
Oh, sure, yeah, I'm sorry. Anytime.
Number one, you never ever tell us how long it takes you to go back to see if the violation's been fixed. So I have violations that were in April of last year that still aren't fixed. So it all sounds good, but when you say
Right.
we give you 14 to 21 days and then we'll reinspect, you have no time frame for when you go out there. And the other one was your last statement. It says you possibly can lose your ability to serve. Now, that's not what City Council told us they wanted to do. And it's been 2.5 or 2 plus 3 months. At the very beginning of this, in May of 2020, we all went to City Council, or 3 of us did, said, where's the accessibility? Rob Dayton says, oh, by September of 2020, we're going to start fining people. It's still not happening. There's no enforcement. Let's do education.
Let's let him finish this presentation.
Well, I just want to ask those 2 questions, though, about there is no time frame for the reinspection. Okay.
So generally, it's the 14 to 21 days, but as I mentioned, we have to allow them sufficient time to correct the violation, and then the second part of that, which I did mention, was staff resources and when we can get out there. A lot of times it involves us having to work with our consultant because we do not have this expertise, so we need to bring them along and coordinate that effort. So when we coordinate that effort, we need to do it as more of a, not just for one particular item, we want to go out and have another enforcement, I don't want to say sweep, but I can't think of another word.
Okay.
So as far as our enforcement figures to date, this is a combination of a number of enforcement actions. So we have issued 15 administrative citations. I can tell you that as of Wednesday, our certified access specialist as well as our staff went down and actually conducted 22 additional inspections. So it was those 15 plus another 7 that had popped up.
Can I ask real quick on that? I received this presentation on the 23rd. How did you know that you were going to have 21 additional inspections on the next day?
I don't know what
I received
presentation?
this slide in my email on the 23rd, and you said you'd done this on the 24th. How did you know that was what the result was going to be, 21 additional inspections?
No, it was actually 22. So we knew the 22 places we needed to go on the 24th. So that number was, we already had them in the book of violations, and so we were going out to check them based on the first round and some second rounds. So this is a combination of first and second inspections. So we knew the total number of the 22 locations that we needed to hit.
Slide says 21.
Yeah, I know, but it's 22.
Okay.
It's an
Okay.
update
Got
based
it.
on Wednesday's information. So of those 22, 11 were found to be in compliance, and 11 were found to still be in non-compliance. Of the 11 remaining who are not in compliance, I've been told that they need minor tweaks. I don't exactly know what that is, but it's nothing super major. There's still issues. So I don't want to say minor or major as far as importance, but they're tweaks that they need to do to their outdoor business areas to make them be in compliance. So they were issued additional citations, and we will be following with them hopefully within 14 to 21 days. So we keep having it. We had 44. There are 44 businesses out there with these outdoor business areas. Over time, 22 had violations, so we're at 50%. We don't want 50%, we want 100%, and we want compliance. So that's what we're after.
So you feel like you're at 75% now as of Wednesday? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So as far as parklets are concerned, this has been mentioned, Mr. Marston, as you stated quite often, that the focus has just been on State Street, and you're correct. We are currently working with that existing certified access specialist to fine tune what they're going to be doing next for us in the parklets throughout the city. It's a little bit different than State Street. Obviously, the State Street outdoor business areas are confined to a area you can kind of go top to bottom, bottom to top pretty easily. So the 70 or so, roughly 70 parklets that are out in the city, we're going to try and bundle those up into areas and work with our cast to get out there in the next few weeks. And that enforcement process will be identical to the State Street enforcement process as far as timing and things like that. So we share your frustration. This is new for us. This is something that we wish we could have the resources to not have to deal with and get it all taken care of, but we are doing the best we can. Not that that's satisfactory, but I do want you to know that we're doing the best we can. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a question. Thank you for taking this on. It is a very difficult, ambiguous gray area. You know, we're trying to quantify it as much as possible. I had a question regarding the citations. Did I understand correctly that you go out, do an inspection, and then issue a citation, go back and re-inspect, and if it's not compliant, issue a second citation, and then give them a second chance?
That's a great question. So again, cumbersome process. So it starts out with the initial visit. If they are in violation, they get a notice of violation. And so that's kind of a, hey, you're not in compliance, get in compliance. You've got 14 to 21 days, roughly around that. Then we come back out and do that, what's called a first re-inspection. And if they're still in violation, then it goes into an admin citation. And that's where dollars and cents start happening. So the initial notice of violation is just that. You're being noticed that you have a violation. Then if we come back and they're in violation, we go to an administrative citation, which involves fines, a second re-inspection, and not just a second, we have a third.
So that seems to me like a very cumbersome, long process. Why can't we just skip the first notice and go to citation right away?
That's a great question, and I'm not a lawyer, but that is what we work with our city attorney's office, and this is the process that we've been given. It's similar to other enforcement processes as far as allowing folks, again, this is a hugely important issue. I completely agree. But again, this is the process we've been given to give these people due process to fix. And so it's again, like you said, cumbersome process.
On that specific point, though, I would commend you. I was a little confused, and I had a question. But if there is a financial penalty following the first visit, the first revisit, excuse me, they get the notice that they're, and then you go back, so you're there a second time, the first revisit. If they're in violation at that point, there is a financial penalty then going forward until it's corrected or they are, shut down. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that to me, I think, is significant. As you gave the report, it sounded like there's really no penalty, no fine during the period of violation and while the different levels of inspection are going on. But thank you for clarifying.
That's not how I understand it.
That's why I'm looking for the clarification here, is I understand it now. Somebody's in violation and you're there for inspection, they get a notice of violation and they're given 14 to 21 days approximately to correct it. You come back 14 to 21 days later. If they're still in violation, now you're citing them, beginning a fine or a penalty period, and they're given another 14 to 21 days to correct. You come back for a second re-inspection, and if they're in violation, they get another 14 to 21 days, during which fines and penalties continue to grow in mount. After that third inspection, the second re-inspection, then if they're still in violation, they're subject to having that opportunity to work the parklets removed.
Well, I'm afraid you're misunderstanding the whole thing.
Well, I want to hear him tell me that.
Okay, but he won't tell you what I'm going to tell you. Go ahead.
You're probably right. So that is.
I don't care whether they're charging them and whether people are paying or not. I want to understand what the process is supposed to be.
I think the unfortunate part, that there is a financial component to it. It's not much, and
Okay.
I can't exactly remember.
You don't feel it's a deterrent, though?
No.
Okay.
I think it's 100. Yeah, I think it goes 100, 250. And so my hope is that the people out there who we are inspecting, I would hope, and I think we would all hope, that they're not being nefarious and just blowing this off. I know, the laughter, I know.
2+ years,
So-
you're blowing it off, right?
So, $100 or $250 fine for those folks who are blowing us off, they're looking at it probably as this
Cost of
table
doing
turns
business.
$1,000 in a weekend. I'll pay your fine. I'm hoping that's not the case, and we're seeing a lot of progress. I just don't. I think it's a lack of understanding, unfortunately, and so obviously our goal is again compliance. We'd love to see them all out there being in compliance so everybody could access these. That's our main goal. And again, the financial side, unfortunately, the stick isn't real big.
Gotcha. But the process, as I relate it back, is that what it's supposed to be?
That's generally how it goes, yeah. Yeah, and the unfortunate part, if you come out to a second inspection and they've cleared the violations, but now another one has popped up, then that comes back to a first violation. It starts the process. So again, it's, I know you're frustrated, we're frustrated as well. It's unfortunately the process.
Interesting thing, obviously you hear the committee's frustration. Some of it is visceral because people have not only been living with it perhaps personally for many, many years, but especially over these last 2.5. And some of the frustration is academic, just understanding right from wrong and why can't we get it right, and advocating to do it right. But some of it is true, it's real, it's visceral, and it impacts the quality of some of these committee members and their friends and our acquaintances' lives every day. That's why it is so important.
It's not just the committee.
Right,
It's
that's
a
right.
number
Our
of
friends-
disabled
Yeah, of course.
people, elderly, people come to visit their mother in a nursing home and want to take them out to eat and can't get the wheelchair into a parklet, don't want to take the mother inside. I think that we could eliminate probably the second and third reinspection if it's not against any legal thing, if we just up the fine immediately during the first inspection, which they've already been given notice number 1, we go back to inspect, just say, the fine is $1,000 or the fine is $2,000. They're going to seriously think about that. $100 is almost laughable if I'm a business person. And you even said that because of the turnover of that table. The other question is, what are the major violations you're seeing after the first and second inspection?
So violations vary. A lot of it is if you're coming off the curb down into a parklet, so they don't have a deck, it'll be the slope, railing on the slope, guards on the things like that, and then also tables, chairs are the primary violations that we see. And I appreciate the dollar figures you give. Again, we don't institute what those fees are. We don't institute what the process is.
Who does,
Again,
though?
that would be probably start with the city attorney's office. If not,
I mean, did they know how much time is being wasted by staff doing 3 inspections? I mean, getting $1,000 would probably eliminate all that.
they're very involved in the inspection process, as I
Okay.
mentioned earlier. That's the process that has been dictated to us from that
Okay.
office that we do.
Okay,
So,
maybe
yeah.
we can write the city attorney a letter and address that.
And of course, all fees and things like that eventually end up before council at some
I
point.
want to point something out that Dan Henchy has told us over and over again. Instead of a fine being levied, and then every day of that small fine, it's only when you go out there again and notice it. So it's not like a daily fine anymore, which the rule said $100 daily and then $250 daily. It's not daily. Henchy says this. you have to have a picture of the violation each time you find them. And I will ask you straight out, tell us the truth here, how much money has been collected after 2 years and 3 months from all these violations that we've seen? Do you have a number for that yet?
Again, I'm new to this. I do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
No one has a number for that. Pretty shocking to me.
Well, I don't have a number
Well,
for
every
it.
time I've asked anyone, they don't have a number. So you're not being serious, or they're not being serious. I'm not blaming you. I know you're new to this job, but this is not a new program. This is over 2 years old program. I have on my little USB here showing violations in September of 2020. They're still violating. There's no excuse that I can think of that says you can violate for 2 years and still not have a retraction of your license. No? No comment? Sorry.
Your points are well taken. We're frustrated as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Nick?
Oh, I got a lot of comments, and I'm going to lead with, I'm going to apologize beforehand because I realize you guys are, new to this and put up to this farce. But you have to understand that we've been having these conversations with someone like you and council for 2 years and a quarter. And I don't see anything you've presented today that's different than the model that we've been promised for 2 years. Can you tell me what's different in your enforcement model today than what was before you put this together? Did you look at the previous enforcement model? Did you follow up on the 2 years of first and second notices? We've had 2 years and we've never gotten to a third notice. Okay, now you're starting over again with first notices. This is absolutely ridiculous. So I guess you're not surprised that I'm disappointed that you're going to use the same model citywide. But I am thankful for you telling me that the problem is at council and at the city attorney's office.
Well, to clarify, I'm not saying that the problem is with council or
Well,
the
it
city
is,
attorney's
because that's
office.
where the fines, the ineffective fines, are being set. The city attorney is choosing to make this easy on the businesses at the cost of my civil rights and the civil rights of this community's disabled members. It's absolutely uncalled for. And what the saddest part about it is, I have known for 2 years this wasn't going to change unless there was litigation. And nobody within the city organization chart is going to pay for that civil litigation. There's not going to be any performance evaluation that's, nobody's going to get a slap on the hand for their inept handling of this process. Only the taxpayers. Every one of us is going to pay when there's a settlement. And when the DOJ climbs in here and starts mandating all of this, then the expenses are going to go through the roof. And it's clear to me that's what it's come to. Do you feel that your enforcement efforts have yielded any appreciable results?
Do I feel, or is that,
do
by
you-
the numbers, yes, they are, we are getting results.
Okay,
From
but-
the 44 out there and the initial 22, we're now down to 11. My understanding, as I mentioned, is those 11 remaining are, the tweaks they need to make are rather small. And so we are going to be working with them to make that happen and get to 100% compliance. That's our goal.
And you feel that you need a CASP to go out there, a CASP consultant, high dollar consultant to go out there and with you to find these. There's 3 or 4 things that need to be checked. And I think it's ridiculous. I think that money would have been way better spent on on some training of full-time staff in an enforcement officer position. So there's feedback there. I've heard you mention that there was a effort to secure additional resources that will enable staff. You sent me an email saying that you were looking into additional resources that could enable staff to engage in parklet and move quickly with the enforcement of ADA standards on those parklets. Can you elaborate on that effort?
Yes, that was my last slide here. So we are working with the existing CASP we have, who has been working with us on State Street. And we're gonna, they've given us a proposal, doing some tweaks on that because the enforcement process will be the same, but we would like them to do a little bit more of the administrative component to speed things along. Instead of having us come back and file the reports and things like that, we want to make the initial notice of violation a little bit easier to fill out with some of the major issues that are some of the recurring issues that seem to happen all the time. Those are easy check boxes instead of just writing it up. So we want to try and streamline this, so we're working with them to tweak the proposal a little. And again, the hope is that we'll be out there in a week or two.
How does that,
27 months we've been waiting for some action on this. And we're still talking about, 2 weeks from now, we'll start. It's ridiculous. Can you tell me about how many, and I know the city budgeting process works uses the term full-time equivalents. Can you tell me how many full-time equivalents you think it would take to get ADA compliance citywide in 30 days?
ADA compliance for parklets.
Parklets, yeah, that's what we're talking about, parklets.
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah. Because no one's cared to take a look at it. Can you tell me how many FTEs were spent on accessibility enforcement since you've got involved?
How many, say that again, FTEs?
Yeah, I'm trying to quantify the effort that's been put into this.
Yeah. Not really understanding your question.
Well,
how many FTEs
and
do we have working on this?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
has been brought to bear on this project
Nick,
since you've gotten involved.
excuse me a moment. I just want to remind our committee that we are advisory in nature, not adversarial in nature, very simply. Advocacy is a whole nother issue. We've talked about how frustrated we all are, but attacking city employees that are doing their best is not going to move the process forward. Thank you.
I agree. We can move on.
Maybe it's a good time for that break.
I'm not sure where I see there was a personal attack there, but thank you for your.
I'm not speaking only and specifically to you, Nick. I'm speaking in general.
Okay.
It's important for our committee to remember that we are advisory in nature, not adversarial, regardless of the frustration, regardless of the lack of action or what we would want to see happen. And because we are giving advice does not mean that it has to be followed.
Yep.
We are not making the decisions. We are advisory. And I think it's important that we remember our role in helping the city to do the work on behalf of the citizens.
Okay.
well, I have a different question.
I have
then.
one more question and I'll be
Okay,
done.
Nick.
And a follow-up on this, depending on your answer. Is it fair to say that the downtown business owner's happiness is a factor in your job performance evaluation?
In my job performance evaluation, no.
No?
Is there a measure of happiness quantifiable? No.
Okay.
My job is to the entire community, not a certain component of it.
Okay,
Thank you. I'm done.
I appreciate what Mr. Rasser said, but advisory, we've done this for 27 months. We went to city council in May of 2020, said there's nothing in here about accessibility. So we formed an ad hoc committee, but the people at downtown parking wouldn't deal with us. So for 27 months, we've been saying the same thing at every meeting. There's no action here. There's no enforcement. Oh, let's have volunteer. Let's have them do it on their own. Still nobody's been shut down. So that's why the tempers fly, because nobody from the city administrator on down cares here. Everybody said, oh, we'll put more money to it. And Nick did ask what kind of increased funding is there? And we didn't get an answer there. We've asked City Council for new increased funding. Their State Street Advisory Ad Hoc said we need more funding. We were promised more funding, nothing shows up. And my final question here is, what would the city do if they knew that there were some spots that did not allow black or gay people to go to their restaurant? I think that would be a big, shocking thing, and there would be some civil action being done. But somehow, we're able to say that black, gay, white, Hispanic people in wheelchairs can't eat at a certain restaurant, and that somehow is okay in this city. And I want to ask this, my final question. Mr. Bossy, who is it telling you, don't spend any money on this? There's someone up there telling you guys, 27 months later, it's still not important. And I'd like to know who that person is.
Respectfully, Chair Marston, nobody's telling us that.
Well, then-
We are currently expending city funds through the use of a CASP consultant. We are also spending our internal funds for staff who will go out with these folks and enforce. I can let you know, looking out in the future, the State Street Interim Operations Ad Hoc Committee is looking at the idea of charging on a per square
For
foot
rent, right?
basis for parklets and expanded outdoor business areas on State Street. I should say just the State Street component for now. And part of the idea behind that is assessing a fee that's appropriate enough that would not only cover the costs of the maintenance and operation that we have taken on from this new effort, but also to possibly fund either a half-time or even a citywide full-time person to look into not only design issues, but ADA compliance for these parklets, or sorry, for the expanded outdoor business areas and the parklets. So it is something that group is looking at that is getting some traction, and part of that revenue stream that would be generated would go towards exactly this effort.
I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, Rob Dayton decided to cancel the permit fee for the outdoor dining license agreement, which is like $85,000, $90,000 a year. Somehow it's canceled. And since that time, we haven't charged anyone for using public streets that we all paid for. And somehow these restaurant owners think that they now own these public streets and don't have to pay a penny rent and don't have to follow ADA requirements. So that's the problem that somehow doesn't get looked at.
Chair Marston, just real quick, we've actually heard from many of the businesses using these outdoor spaces that they would like to start paying a fee, if you can believe that. They have mentioned that, so they're ready.
And we've had just recently another talk that you were at Coast Village Road. Those retailers are upset there. We've had other people from the city who are in the non-promenaded spot that know that their businesses are getting hurt by this. It just seems one-sided that we're helping the restaurant owners having double or triple their shares, which means they're double or tripling their income, and yet they're not wanting to be $100 or $200 to put the proper ramp up. And that's just irritating.
Mr. Bossy, maybe, I don't know if you have direct communications with that interim ad hoc committee.
Yes, we do.
But maybe implementing a permitting process for these parklets or outdoor dining, if it becomes a fee-based thing, then through that permitting process, there can be evaluation of ADA requirements.
Yes, we have been talking to them.
So, but they would have to have a permit and reviewed plans and drawings.
And that was the whole problem, because this was called a temporary thing, even though the ADA says that you can't have a temporary thing without.
We did get, what do we have, almost 75% compliance now?
On a very small part of State Street, not citywide.
Right,
They
but
haven't
we're
even
gonna
looked
be
at the
addressing that. So I think we should move on. I think we.
Well, that's
we've
fine, but I
taken-
don't think we should move
This is
on.
the messenger, I don't think we should attack the messenger.
So I just want to make sure that it's clear that the advice from this committee has been for 27 months that there should be a licensing program, and maintaining that license should involve a fee to support the enforcement, and the enforcement should make it very clear that they're permit is at risk if they don't maintain compliance. And I don't understand why we're still having this conversation 27 months later.
Can we all agree on that last statement, that we need to have those two things in our meeting minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your
Thank you.
discussion.
Thank you both.
Is it break time?
Okay, 10-minute break. What time do you have now?
It's 11:20.
Okay, we'll be back at 11:30. Thank you.
So he has seen and reviewed these, and I asked him to provide any updates to any of these questions, as well as to provide some updated information. So I just wanted to provide that context on the information that was sent out in advance. And with that, I'll turn it over to Officer Morton.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having me here today.
Welcome.
My name is Joshua Morton. I'm a lieutenant with the police department here in Santa Barbara. Currently, I am assigned to the strategic operations, our training, recruitment, our wellness division. So that's what I'm currently in charge of. I just came from our watch commander's position, so in charge of all of our patrol officers in conjunction with other lieutenants. So what I'm here today to talk to you guys about, obviously, is our disabled parking, the enforcement actions that we take on that stuff, and then answer any questions you guys have. So I think the easiest way for me to do this is briefly just kind of provide you with some numbers over the last 2 years. I have some additional beyond that, but I think we'll just start with the last 2 years of some of the numbers of citations and other things. And then I can address a few of the questions on the sheet specifically related to some of the other concerns or some of the things that were brought up in previous committees, so I can make sure there's any clarification that needs to be done on those. But first off, starting with 2021, we had a grand total of 284 disabled parking violation citations, so in the handicap parking spots. I can kind of clarify a little bit of those. 119 of those citations were actually closed with an actual violation. 56 of those were dismissed, most likely because the person actually did have a valid parking permit. They just didn't actually display it at the time. That's normally when those are dismissed. Obviously, for those of you who have been on the committee before, you probably are aware of that as well. We have 32 that are still open that are pending resolution, either meaning they're still waiting to be able to have some kind of adjudication on them, or they just have not paid them yet. There was 31 that were voided, meaning the person who was actually there at the scene met the parking enforcement officer or officer who was there at the scene, and they actually voided out the citation. 99% of the time, that's because they actually had a valid permit. They just had not had it displayed. And so instead of going through that whole process, it's easier to avoid that citation. And then there was actually 46 warnings. So I can't give you exact examples of what that is, but that's the warning examples leading up to the 284 actual grand total. For 2022, up to date, or actually up to August 22nd of this year, we had 26 that were closed, so meaning that those fines were paid. We had 15 that were dismissed. There are 3 on hold, meaning there's some issue with either the citation itself or some issue with the citation, how it was issued. 19 are open, 1 was voided, and there's 19 warnings, so a total of 83 so far this year. So it's a little bit less, and I can address some of that concern and something you guys have probably heard related to the fact that our staffing levels are greatly reduced. So right now we have a total allotment of 12 parking enforcement officers that we can hire. We only have 7 current parking enforcement officers. Myself being in charge of the training and recruitment division, we are actively, constantly having the open enrollment, the open ability to apply for a parking officer within the city. We just keep reopening and having it open. We've been very unlucky in having people apply for the position amongst all the positions here at the police department, but I do have some good news that we have 28 people that have applied for our openings right now. So, but again, they have to go through the same kind of process. They have to do a personal history statement. They have to do a background. They have to go through the whole same process that all of our employees do. So it's a little bit lengthier period of time, but it's promising that we have 28 applications, whereas the last time, 3 months ago, we only had 7. So it's definitely helpful that that's going to be able to bring up our staffing levels a little bit. So that's kind of the numbers from there for those. Overall, over the last, since 2017, the numbers are pretty much the same related to how many we've done per year, how many citations we've issued. But that's kind of numbers. I can answer any other questions on those if anybody has any on that right now.
I'm a little curious about the warnings. I mean, obviously there's a great deal of discretion that officers are allowed to have, and you probably don't know the circumstances behind those warnings. You know, maybe it was somebody, oh, I have my placard in my other car or something like that. I just would would like to, I would hope that maybe we could send out a bulletin cautioning traffic enforcement about warning people who don't deserve the warning. I see a lot of this. I see it every day, actually. Every day of my life, I see ADA parking violations, and it's a calculated risk, and yeah, I take calculated risks too. You know, I don't always drive the speed limit.
Right, as don't I, so
Right.
we're in the same boat
Right,
there.
Right, and I appreciate you coming out today, and I appreciate all you do, putting yourself out there every day for this community.
Yes.
Well, thank you. If I can, I'll try to address that little bit of question. I do know from personal experience as an officer and issuing parking citations in general, because all of our officers can issue parking citations as well as our parking enforcement officers, most of the warnings are actually to the point where the parking enforcement or officer has not actually started the citation. So we used to use a system called WinSight. Now we use Data Ticket. It's a different parking enforcement system, but it's all automated and it's done on a phone. Once the parking enforcement officer starts to enter the information, they have to void it. So that's why you see the void. If they haven't started entering the information yet, but the person comes out and says, "Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I forgot to hang my placard," or "I do have it, I'm here to pick up my mom, here's her placard," that kind of thing, they will then enter the information, but it becomes a warning. So it's actually a record of the warning. So when it comes to our parking enforcement officers, that's most likely what the warning is, as opposed to if I was a police officer and somebody came out in that circumstance, I would just say, "Hey, don't do it again." So we might even have a few more warnings that aren't recorded because the police officers don't have the same kind of system. We just have handwritten tickets that we have for that because the city just doesn't have enough money to issue 140 of the WinSight systems because they're kind of expensive. So
I guess the warnings that I'm imagining and would hope we avoid is "Oh, I'm sorry, it was just 5 minutes." You know,
I would agree, and this is me speaking personally. I don't give warnings for that kind of stuff, especially for the disabled parking, red zones, because those are the ones that not only are they more pricey, but they make people realize I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So I remember a comment earlier about the parking enforcement in general, and just if we give warnings all the time, we're not setting people up for, if you give them a ticket the first time, a lot of times they will not repeat the action. So I agree with that as well. Hopefully that answered your question, sir.
Officer Morton, this is Bob Burnham. How do the parking fines compare to, say, the parking violations in a street sweeper zone that needs to be clear?
Are you speaking specifically for the disabled parking fines?
Yes.
So a street sweeping fine usually roughly runs from $50 to $65. The disabled parking fines are the lowest fine that you initially get from a citation is $353.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So and then if you were late, it doubles. So if you don't pay the ticket on time, it automatically doubles. So it can be a hefty fine very quickly.
Now, did you say
Thank you.
$353.
I thought it was $255.
No, it's $353, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I just double checked that on our parking citations today, so I want to make sure I have the correct information. So,
Thank you very much.
one of the questions I did want to kind of address that was brought up in these questions, kind of about the deputizing, I guess, or allowing volunteers to do some of the parking enforcement. This was a question that was asked in 2018, I believe, and we have our VIP program that is volunteers in policing. They're usually people who they come and donate their time to go out and walk downtown and do walk Milpas, walk the beach, to be able to be visible. You can probably have seen them in the gray shirts. We call them gray shirts, and they have the Santa Barbara PD patches, but they're wearing a gray shirt, usually shorts, because it's more comfortable, except in the winter. Unfortunately, we looked into getting them done, but they don't meet the qualifications because of the computer entry systems. They don't meet the qualifications for what we call our Collette system, our National Crime Index system, for us to be able to check vehicles' parking permits, check vehicles' license plate status expired. They don't, because of volunteer status, they don't have access to that, so it's hard to grant them any kind of enforcement action on those kind of things. So we're still looking at other avenues of how we can try to do that, but it's definitely been difficult when it comes to the regulations for doing that. So We still have the ability to have all of our park enforcement officers and all of our officers do it. We do have other staff members, including some of our records personnel, other people who have those accesses, but they're not out in the field. They're only within the department, so having them have that access doesn't necessarily help because they're not out in the field to do any kind of enforcement action.
Would they be able to issue a warning thing? Would they be able to issue a warning, though, like a warning ticket, do not park here or you will be fined?
We could, but we would rather have that call come into our dispatch and have a park enforcement or an officer come out and actually issue a citation for that. So it's, again, the compliance issue is a little bit better when you actually get that. 'Cause
Right,
if
but we don't want all of us who might in one day see a violator have 7 police officers used just to write tickets. So if there were a warning and we could write a little warning ticket, that would be nice. But it's just, it's an issue, in general, the public doesn't recognize the need. It's an empty
Yes.
space. I'm in a hurry. There's no other spaces, so why not? And it's just that people don't respect the blue. They don't think it's a necessary, nobody's there. So, you know, there must be if we do the warning system, even on a trial basis, we can see how it works after a year. I mean, is that something we could consider maybe?
I will definitely have to look into that. I don't know if they're allowed to issue warnings. We don't necessarily, other than our parking enforcement officers, because of that computer system, we don't normally issue warnings. If we give a warning, it's just kind of a verbal thing. We do have a 72-hour warning notice that's legally required if we're going to tow a vehicle that's abandoned on the street. And that's just California law. If we find a vehicle that somebody reports as abandoned, we have to put a notice on it and give them 72 hours. So we may be able to adapt a system like that where some of our volunteers could give warnings. But again, I still would encourage everyone, even though you're saying 7 people here on the committee calling in the violations all the time, there's our non-emergency line, which I believe we have, the committee has that number. It's on this questionnaire as well. At the very, after question 11. So that non-emergency number is a good number to call because you're not tying up the 911 line. The problem with any of those calls in from any community member is if, depending on what our park enforcement officers are on or our police officers on, is the timely matter of when they're going to be able to get there. So that's the frustrating part about if we can actually make it in time before the person leaves with the violation. So, and even that works with our volunteers because most of the time they're on foot. So if they were on Upper State Street and they had to go down to Milpas for a violation, it would take them a long time to get there as well. So, but it is something I'll look into. So I'll write that down real quick.
Officer Martin, if there's a follow-up to Karen's question, what if, I know there's always a problem with, seeing a parking violation, calling in dispatch, there's always the problem of real time as far as the response. Is there a way through social media or some kind of mobile system, people using their phones, taking pictures, sending that information into you right away to get maybe to reduce the response time? Is there any possibility of improving that sort of technology and data reception and response?
Nick, you're going to bring that up later, right?
I was going to bring it up after his presentation.
Okay.
Before I became a member of this committee, I presented to the committee an application, a phone-based application that allowed for citizen enforcement of ADA parking. And it's very similar to the way many municipalities will contract out their red light camera enforcement. This municipality may have red light cameras, but I don't believe that they're administered locally. There's some call center or data center remotely that processes the tickets and collects the fines and takes a fee off the top and sends it into the municipality. And so there's this app that I've recommended that allows for citizens to document ADA abuse and send it into this data center, and the data center, if they are contracted with the municipality, can issue the citation, collect the fines, take a small percentage off the top, and send the remainder on to the municipality. And it was presented to the police department at that time in 2015, and there was no appetite for it then, but I was curious to see if there might be a change in perspective. So here's, you know, I understand that we have a crime problem in this state. We have ridiculous defund the police campaigns going on. We have a governor that's defunding and decriminalizing everything, and I'm seeing the rise in crime in my own neighborhood everywhere, and I don't want to take one cop away from, you know, a serious violent crime or theft even to enforce ADA parking. But that means ADA parking almost never gets enforced. And without some alternative solution, people are going to continue to take the calculated risk. I'll be there 5 minutes. No chance a cop will show up in the 5 minutes. I'll be gone. And I'll keep doing this as long as I can. And I know it happens. I see it every day. I have called the non-emergency number, and I've waited over an hour.
For someone to show, yes.
Nobody ever shows up. The one time I tried to take a different approach. I confronted the person who was violating, and I blocked them in, and they called the cops. And the officer came out and threatened to cite me and refused to cite the violator.
Well, that to me would be a little bit of an interesting circumstance. I'm not sure how that happened. I understand. I would not recommend doing that action only because that could put yourself in harm's way. But if the officer had the violation, I'm not sure of the circumstances. But I agree that there could have been a citation that was issued that time to the person in the handicap parking spot, especially if it wasn't valid. So, addressing the initial bit of information, I'm not sure. I wasn't aware of any of those applications like that myself, but I don't know if there's a legality we have where we could or couldn't do that within the city, depending on how we do it. But I don't have a problem looking into that as well.
Ms. Shu, was that not information that I sent you and asked for on this presentation?
I'll make sure to resend that information over.
Okay.
And I apologize if I didn't see it. I definitely don't have an issue in looking into whether or not we could have an application. I know there's a number of roadblocks when it comes to turning over enforcement actions to citizens of the community, but it doesn't mean that an application like that couldn't help. So what it ends up occurring is if you have someone who violates this and they want to have some kind of hearing process, how does that work? I don't know how that works with the application, because although it may be a clear violation that you see, there might be some mitigating circumstances, or it may be something that the person wants to fight. And so I know that we have our kind of hearing process set up, so I don't know how that would be done in an application that doesn't involve the police department at all, that goes directly to another company that's contracted by the city. So I'll definitely have to look into that as well, but I will take that into.
May I suggest, Nick, that you send a link to that? And I was here when he brought that up before, and the police department didn't want to do it, but there's got to be a reason why that makes sense.
Well, and that's, I don't know, I don't know enough about that.
Can you look into that if he
Yes.
sends you the links to that?
Absolutely, I can.
Okay, and since we're talking about the non-emergency number, I've tried it, many people have complained to me that it's busy, they don't even get to somebody. But we all know that by the time you have time to send a non-emergency person out, the scofflaw has left. So, unlike Nick, who drives around all the time and can see, I don't drive and I can't see very well, but every time I go to the grocery store, I see at least one violator, every time. But what am I supposed to do, write a note and say, please obey? I would like to see if the city, or the police department would print up some kind of a sticker on your letterheads or with your seal or something that you could at least put on a car. It's not from Jim anymore, it's from
From
a
an official
citizen.
government entity, yes.
Yeah, and
yes.
just say, look, this is not legal. The rules are X, Y, and Z. Please abide by them. It's not a ticket, it's not a warning, because I'm not a policeman. But I would love to have a pile of stickers to put on.
Right, a friendly reminder for someone to be able to do that.
And-
I'm not sure about the legality of that either, whether or not we could do that.
Okay.
Obviously, I know we cannot allow other people than the city to use the city seal or the city entity.
Okay,
So
well,
that may be a
just
little
see
bit.
if you can do
issue there,
something that looks
but something like that. So
semi-official.
one of the things that's interesting is, in speaking with our business manager in preparation for this meeting, I was asking how many of our citations really actually have an issue that someone did have their permit, it just wasn't displayed. And she said roughly 60% of the citations we issue for those disabled parkings are actually people have their permit displayed or don't have it displayed, and they show it later that they had it.
Okay.
The reason bringing that up is that's one of the reasons why we don't tow. That's one of the reasons why it's hard for us to issue those kind of things in warnings, because the person is in compliance. They just forgot to hang up their placard. So
Now, you mentioned the sticker for towing. Is that one of those stickers that's really hard to get off?
what do you mean sticker for towing?
You said you had to mark a car before you tow an abandoned car. You have to get.
No, it's not. It's not. It's literally a carbon copy piece of paper. So you
Okay.
write the information on there. The top one goes on the car. The other one goes to our records
Well,
department.
sometimes the frustrated people think, let's just get some stickers that are really hard to pull off and slap that right on their driver's window.
That's in LA, I think they do that.
Okay, well.
Which may be the case. When I think of those kind of things, unfortunately, what comes to my mind is liability and how much money we're going to pay for to have somebody who got accidentally stuck on their paint and they peeled it off and it ripped a piece of the paint off, and then we have, as a city, have to pay for that.
No, I'm not asking for the
damage.
city to do it. I'm
Right.
talking about individuals.
But if it's issued through the city, then
No,
the city would still
this
have the
is a different
liability. So
item.
right, right.
We could just do that on our own. Just
I would not recommend a sticker. I wouldn't recommend doing that necessarily on your own. I don't want anyone who is in the community to have to try to find a different solution to take their own action, because that can put those people in harm's way. Whereas that's our job, because even somebody who is just violating that parking regulation could become very confrontational, and we don't want that to happen to anybody if they see someone sticking something on their car. So that's why I know that's one of the hesitations for that kind of thing. But
Well, to summarize my major point, it sounds good to say call non-emergency and we'll send someone out there, but it's not. It doesn't happen in time.
You were correct.
Therefore, it doesn't happen.
it doesn't always happen. You are
So then
correct.
what can we do to make these things?
It's hard to say. I don't necessarily have a perfect answer for that. I will definitely look into about giving the accessibility of a type of a warning thing that people could hand out. I don't know the legality of whether we could do that or not.
Okay.
So that might be the hurdle that we have, that we can't do that kind of thing, but I'll have to look into that.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Yes, sir.
A couple weeks ago, I attended an event at the Santa Barbara Bowl, and they have 4 required ADA parking spots on property. Well, half of them are used by the shuttle service, but one of the 4 was occupied by an SBPD vehicle, patrol vehicle.
That's
and
correct.
the other one was occupied by
A paramedic.
paramedic.
That's correct.
And how can the police department, anybody justify that? How can we expect the public to respect ADA parking laws when the police department doesn't? I mean, I get it if there's an emergency, response situation. I'm not going to complain about a police officer parked in an ADA spot. But when there's 75 other spots, 40 of them open, why put a police officer in for a long period of time for a 3-hour concert in an ADA spot?
I asked that same question because I was working a bowl concert last Thursday, and I asked the same question when I was told that's where they would like us to park that with the ambulance. And what was told to me by the organizers of the event is those aren't the best parking spots for anyone who has a disability or has that plaque. Now, just
Who
let
are
me.
they to judge?
This is what I'm saying. They said where our shuttles are, where our shuttles drop off and swing around, we have better parking for them in those open spaces to be able to have that. Since they regulate that, that's what they're telling us. And I said, okay, I still am concerned about the fact that we're still putting patrol vehicles or AMR in front of ADA parking spots. One of the things that is interesting about that is none of those parking spots are actually in compliance with the law, in the sense of the ground no longer has a painted thing, and the sign is gone from the wall. So the ADA parking spots there are no longer in compliance, so we couldn't enforce it anyways.
Well, wait a minute. They were in compliance at the time. You couldn't enforce it. They were to code when they were put in. And
That is correct.
yeah,
That is correct.
And so the new spots in front of the new box office, those are compliant,
Mm-hmm.
but those aren't used either. And I realize this is a problem I need to take up with the Bull and maybe with the city's community development and enforcement.
Yeah, the zoning,
officer.
yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
yes.
But I just think it's really bad optics for SBPD to be putting there and for allowing the Bull to tell them to do that.
I agree, and that's why I didn't park in that spot and started to have a conversation with the event supervisor there. So I don't have necessarily a resolution for that today, but I do see the optics are definitely problematic.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm glad you didn't park there. I was gonna say, next time, tell them no, but I'm glad you did.
Yes, I didn't park there. It was easy enough not to park there, so.
Now, was it just a worker at Bowl, or was it high management told you that?
No, this is one of their head people who I've worked on a regular basis. So, and I think having that conversation is a good start. This is the first time I worked a bowl concert in over 6 years because lieutenants normally don't get to work those. It's just because of our low staffing
poor
levels.
lieutenant.
We have to do it. So yeah, well, I'm trying to make sure that we have the overtimes and things covered, which we're not allowed to do. So now that we're so low staff, we're able to help out and make sure we have enough coverage for these events. So, but in general, I want to answer any other questions if anybody has any. One of the questions, Ms. Luckett, I think you brought earlier was about if the signs aren't properly displayed in a business that should be in compliance, but the sign's missing or it's not painted properly. Our local code enforcement is the group who would come out and talk with that private business to be able to make sure that sign was reattached or put up correctly and that the painting was done, because you do have to have both to be able to do the enforcement.
Okay, so it is the police department that's responsible for putting up the signs?
No,
or-
no, it's our code enforcement. The property owner is
Okay.
responsible for putting up the sign.
Okay.
It's our code enforcement's responsible for making sure that they actually do that. Now, as an officer, one of the things that we try to direct is if we go to that and we're not able to enforce it, we have to let the business owner know that this is what you're doing, and then we would try to then reach out to code enforcement to have them be able to come out and address that issue.
So what's the best way as a private citizen to contact your code enforcement?
So
section to
also on this
communicate that
on this questionnaire sheet that was sent out, it says Santa Barbara Community Development Code Enforcement with the phone number there.
Okay.
That number is the best number for them, and you'll be able to state what business it is and what's lacking, and then they could send somebody out to do that.
Got it, okay.
Side
Just,
comment,
can
just
I
to make.
clarify one thing on that? So that's through community development.
Yes.
That's not
I'm sorry.
PD's.
No, that's through
code
community
enforcement.
development. It's not our code. Yeah,
Right.
code enforcement related to building codes, street regulating codes, those are all done through community development, not through the police department, yes.
Got it, okay.
Thank you.
And Karen, just to clarify, it's kind of tricky, but talking about a garage, they can have signs at the entrance and exits and not above the blue curb spaces. So you might go in there and say, hey, there's no sign here, but if it's at all the entrances, then it's okay, so.
That is correct.
It's a little
But
tricky.
This was a private lot
Okay.
with the paint missing and no,
Sure.
no sign. Do we know if the sign got put up where the parklet was taken down? Over in Coast Village Road?
Ms. Luckett, I don't have an update on
Okay.
that piece of that enforcement, but
I'll go by and
community
check.
Community development would have an update.
Okay, perfect. And can meter maids issue handicap parking violations?
Those are our parking enforcement officers. That's what that's what we call them.
Okay.
They are the main people who issue those.
Say the name again.
Parking enforcement officers, or we call
Parking
them PEOs.
Okay.
So parking enforcement officers, yes.
Okay. And then an important question, where does the money for the fines go? Because it was brought up that maybe if we're going to fine people for violating ADA and handicap rules, that it should go into a kitty to maybe do education and enforcement of the police department or the city employees, people involved in enforcement, to educate them, because there's such a high turnover of staff all the time that people not necessarily know the rules. So where does the fines go to?
I'll speak as best I can. Obviously, I'm not an expert on the city's budgetary inner workings, but most of the time, those kind of violations go back to the general fund. So part of the general fund, and then they get dispersed throughout there. There are some regulations to whether or not you can take those kind of funds and not put them back into the general fund, because it's a general, it replaces the expenditures of other things. So I don't know if you can make a separate fund where that goes in specifically for that. There probably, and I please don't quote me on this, but there's probably grants that can be obtained, like our Office of Traffic Safety. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration does what we call OTS grants, Office of Traffic Safety grants, where we can go out and do DUI enforcement and other stuff like that. So it's grants that are specifically done for those kind of things. So there may be grants where you could specifically go out and do type of code enforcement or parking enforcement, but I'm not sure. We usually don't go in as far into that because our park enforcement officers are doing so many things.
In-service education?
Could be in-service, and that's usually some part of it too. There's public outreach and in-service education. And speaking on that note, I do understand the committee's frustration when there is a violation and we're not able to get there on time, because there's a lot of frustration with that, with just in general for calls for service. We're, again, like the other departments, we're doing our best to try to make sure we get there and deal with violations as they come, but I do understand there's a frustration with that. But understand we're also frustrated that there seems to be a lot less compliance in just rules of the road in general, partially because of some of the new regulations, some of the new laws, and just our ability to enforce them as well. So we've seen an increase in traffic collisions because that's related to that kind of stuff. So we're doing our best to do those kind of things, but I do understand that.
Officer Morton, I had a quick question. As far as you mentioned the county bowl, when there's a big event like a concert at the bowl or a festival at the beach or some other big festival, who are the organizers of those events responsible to? Who do they answer to besides the police department maybe, or other city department? And if there's some kind of a violation that needs to be reported, some behavior or something, what's the procedure?
So previously, before mid-2021, it was the police department that was in charge of all special events. All the permits and applications had to come through us. Now that has transitioned over to Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Rec.
So
okay.
Parks and Recreation is the group that deals with, we still have part of that in a sense of we deal with some of the security issues and other things and helping them, but they're the ones who go through the whole process of that. So Parks and Rec is the one who approves the overall permitting. And so if there was a major violation of something that had occurred, obviously, if it's occurring right there and it's something related to parking or some law enforcement issue, we would deal with it then. But otherwise, it would go to Parks and Rec, and they would be able to deal with that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, I have a question. On this sheet, there were questions about private park operators. Now, in a private park, like let's say the bakery where I go to,
Yes.
do police officers give tickets for private lots if there's a handicap violator?
We absolutely can. Both our parking enforcement officers and our police officers can issue citations there. One of the things, though, is we don't normally go and seek those out. If we're doing parking enforcement, if the officer's out in a parking lot and they're looking for parking violations, or the parking enforcement officer's doing that, they're mainly doing it on the city streets. We usually do not go enforce those unless someone calls in. Then we will go and enforce that on there. And again, then it depends on the time we're able to get there. If the violation's there, we will issue it. But we will absolutely issue one. We just don't normally seek them out on private property. And it has to be private property that's open for the public to park. So a perfect example is a business that has 4 parking spots in behind that's all designated for their employees only. It's not open public parking. We wouldn't go even if there was some sort of violation there because it's not open to the public.
What if it's the valet company using the handicap space? Just putting cones on it, or their equipment, their stand, or?
Yes, there's the section B, I think, for that section is blocking that in any way, not actually parking, but blocking that, and that can then be enforced by the police department and give us a violation under the section B, not section A. because that, you're not allowed to block that or do anything like that with any kind of equipment or anything,
So would you,
So it would be issued to the property owner most likely,
the
or,
property owner, not the valet service?
well, if, under the circumstances, it could be issued to the valet service, and then they
Okay.
would have to take it up with the property owner,
Okay.
yes. Same thing as if someone was, in this example here with a valet, if the person whose valet vehicle was parked there, they would actually get the ticket, then they would have to take it up with the valet service to pay for that, or to help, say, hey, it wasn't me, I didn't park there, they parked it in that spot, and then I was given a ticket. Because even then, we would still go and enforce that if we were called on it. We wouldn't go in and proactively enforce it only if we were called on it.
Because there is a valet company in Santa Barbara that is a frequent violator.
Regularly does that, and if we call, then the person, and we're able to get out there, we would issue that citation, and the vehicle owner would have to handle that through the valet service to have them cover it.
Okay.
So,
I think that'll be better covered with a new subcommittee that's gonna talk to Emil and find out. Thank you.
All right.
If there's no other questions, I want to thank you for your time and also for
you.
your service,
very much.
protecting us,
Yes.
even though Bob and Scott and I don't drive.
well, that's not just protecting for driving, so thank you, and Nick, please, if you would send me the information on that, I would love to look into, see what we can do. I can't guarantee anything. If there was a reason they said no previously, it might be, but I will definitely look into see if it's something we could do, but there could be a legality behind it, so.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're not running too far behind. Subcommittees reports. The first one, annual report, the ad hoc committee. Nick, did you say you were gonna read, summarize that, or?
You
We've
know,
all read it, right?
Unfortunately, I did not bring a printed copy of it with me,
Okay.
but I can give you a summary of the, oh, yeah. I didn't pick up a packet when I came in.
I just wanted to say real quick, I think Ashley, you did a wonderful job condensing, we had 3 or 4 drafts, I think, that we sent to you
I think I have it.
through several Zoom calls, and
No, I don't.
really tweaked a lot of information, tried to reconfigure some goals and priorities and challenges and all the different sections of it. But I think Ms. Hsu did a yeoman job trying to condense something into a report that will be somewhat palatable for city council.
I also want to thank the ad hoc committee for all the work they put on it. Ashley, let me ask you this. How would you like to proceed with this? Do we really want to read this out, or can we just read this on our own, as we should have, and then send you a few suggestions in the next week or so? How would you like to get us moving ahead with this?
It'd save time, wouldn't it?
Chair Marston, I would love if everyone could review this on their own and send me any comments or feedback within the next week.
Okay.
And then I'll take those.
Second in here? I'll vote. Okay, so we're all going to reread it and send comments to Ashley within a week, and then you'll finalize it all, right? I think everybody did a great job. Thank you all.
Thank you.
That should save us some time. Is that okay with you, Nick?
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't want to read through this.
I didn't think you did.
Yeah.
Okay, Sidewalk Act Committee, I know you have a few,
I think we met, didn't we, back on April the 23rd, I think, with
Yeah.
Jim Dewey, and I'm frankly, my memory is wobbly here as far as all the things we covered. I mean, some sidewalk infill, there was something to do with
Maybe I can help.
Amtrak station, what else did we do?
We prepared this was a first for an ad hoc committee since my involvement on AAC, but we actually prepared a printed report. We had a little bit of trouble
with the photographs, right?
presenting on screen here. There was some sort of formatting issue, but that report has been uploaded to the website and is now part of it's linked in the minutes from the last meeting, and I think this is a good practice for us to strive for on ad hoc committee reports, especially when there's a significant work effort like we had done with Jim Dewey on all the barrier removal in the parkways along ADA parking spots.
Yes, yeah.
So.
But as far as the last meeting, we didn't have anything, so we
But
have
we
nothing.
haven't had a meeting
Right.
since.
We haven't had anything to report then,
Right,
since
right.
Nick's. So have you seen it on the website? The report from the April meeting, was it? Bob?
Not yet.
Okay. All right.
I will look that up, though. That would be a challenge for me to find that.
Yeah, same. Okay, Blue Curb Parking Ad Hoc Committee. Nick and Suzanne?
I can, well, we've had the addition of the 6 new spots, and, I'm really pleased. What I had hoped to get 7, blue curbs on the 100 blocks. Now we got 6 on the 0-100 block, and hopefully we can revisit 100 block, soon, because the first thing I noticed when we got all these new blue curbs is they were all occupied. And so it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I'm so thrilled to see the curbs there, and I'm glad they're getting used, but I still can't park because they're full.
You build them, they will come.
Right? Well, and that's great. We heard from Ms. Capone. She's appreciative. She's using them. They're getting used. Ms. Shu has seen them getting used. I hope that speaks to the need, and we can maintain some momentum on this project. I do want to ask if staff can update the blue curb map. We have worked on a blue curb map, and the new blue curbs were not on it when I checked yesterday. Also, there's some opportunities with these new blue curbs on the 0-100 blocks. And I really had hoped to have time to audit them all before this meeting. But the one that I have used several times is on East Figueroa. And there's a pretty significant barrier to use there. The sidewalk and or the infill has subsided there, and it's sunk down about 3 inches below the curb level. And that creates a huge barrier for my wheelchair accessible van. My wheelchair can't back over that large curb rise from the sidewalk level. And there's some others. Some of the spots that were chosen have tree wells and things like that, obstructions, barriers in the parkway there, adjacent to the blue curbs, that make them less than ideal. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to tune those up a little bit. And I thought I would probably bring that up with Mr. Dewey at the next infill meeting. Other than that, we do have a vacancy on this ad hoc committee, and I'm wondering if there's anybody else that would like to join it. Ms. Luckett? No? Okay.
All right, I will.
Thank you.
I would have done it, but since I don't drive, I think
Right,
it's
right.
better to
Are
get
you
a
on
driver
any
in.
of these?
Okay. Okay, so Karen's going to join that committee. Is that the rest of your report then?
Yeah, that's all
Thank
I got
you.
for the.
Now I have good news for Sarita. We're going to do something crazy here. We're going to actually dissolve the Website Application Replacement Project Committee.
We're all done.
We've had very good talks with them, and the 3 of us who are on the ad hoc can talk easily with them. They have places to send in suggestions, and Scott and Zach have been very open to dealing with us. So they've already canceled their group to do it, so we're going to cancel that committee.
Jim, if I could just add to that,
Good job.
Jim and I were able to go to the celebration, the WARP celebration at City Hall on this past Wednesday, and had a nice chance to talk with several of the folks from city departments, Cliff Maurer, and I met Vince Wong for the first time, and it was just a
Rebecca?
Yeah, Rebecca, I met her once before, I think, but just a lot of good interaction, a very positive, enthusiastic group that I think can be proud of all the work that all 160 people put into the project. But it was just nice to have a celebratory gathering to recognize that we finally have a new city website, and it's going to work well for hopefully years to come.
I went to that too. I had a funny thing because I went to my eye doctor and I got my eyes dilated. And I had to walk over a mile from the eye doctor down to the free pizza with the shades in your glasses. I could barely see anything, and like Brian came up to me, and I didn't even know who it was.
You did well. You did well.
Well, I faked it. But just to finish up, I met a girl named Wendy who helped me find out how to get out of there, and she said she was the HR manager. So I went and tracked her down. I told her how good Zach and Scott and Vince were.
Yeah.
So I gave her a glowing report on those guys, and she was very happy. I think she even called them in later and told them. Well, that's the rest of our agenda. Does anyone have any final comments to make or anything?
Isn't there an outdoor dining?
I think that.
Well, I don't know what to say here. I mean, they're working on it after 2.5 years, so what can I say?
Oh, and then, yeah, I'd asked at the beginning about talking lights, if there were any updates, if there were any new talking lights. I guess that would be the sidewalk.
Okay, you mean accessible pedestrian signals,
Yes.
right? There's been nothing new, but I told you guys to give your suggestions.
Which we have done.
Yeah, we did that in May, I think.
But that was for the last previous year, and I kept saying there's a new fiscal year starting in July 1st. And I kept reminding you to do it, and I'm not sure if you guys have done the new one for this current fiscal year.
No.
Well, get on it then.
Right. No, right. But were the ones from, were the ones that we suggested for the last fiscal year ever put in?
Right.
No, I guess his question is, if they weren't put in, shouldn't they carry over?
Right.
Does he need to
I was thinking that too.
No, but it's a 2-year, it's a budget for 2 sets every year.
Okay,
So I'm talking about, I don't care when they're put in, but that money had to be spent.
right.
Okay, and now we have a new pile of money that I don't think we've picked a location yet.
I'll email Derek and see what were the 2 lights installed for this year, because you and I, Skylar, I thought we had put in our input for this coming year, starting July. I thought
that is correct.
I thought that was what we submitted in May.
That is true, yeah, sorry about that.
Well, then what was done for the last fiscal year then?
Well, we have to find out what lights were put in for this fiscal year. What was the money spent on the 2 lights for this year?
I'm a little confused again. You gave her some suggestions.
Right.
And that was last year's fiscal budget. So in my mind, you haven't done one for this fiscal year yet. If you gave him a thing in April, then that wasn't be for the future fiscal year. Just work with Scott and
Derek.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't want to miss a chance to get 2 more
Right.
sets in there.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
I'll third. Thank you, everybody, for that.
Did we have someone out there who wanted to make a comment?
The big guy?
She's on staff.
She's staff.
No, she's talking about you.